In 2019, I was moving from Phoenix, Arizona to Santa Maria, California, and my brother was going to go with me. He was going to drive the car. We were going to drive all through the night, and we were going to get there in the morning. And I told him, like, look, there's a lot going on in my life. I'm going to get in this car, and I'm going to say a lot of stuff between now and Santa Maria, California. And no matter what I say, you keep going. You keep driving. And so to you, my dear listener / watcher, because I do have a video podcast of this, I'm going to say the same thing. I'm going to say a lot between the beginning and the end of this podcast, and you keep going. You keep driving that car. 2026 has been a special year. The year of exposing, the year of exposing the evil, exposing the conspiracies, all the things, and I'm jumping in with my very own conspiracy. You can have exactly 3 conspiracies that you believe in and still be a normal person. This is my 3rd, so I'm maxed out here, and I discovered it myself. And today I'm going to take you on the journey of PlasticGate. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Heresy with Heather. My name is Heather, and it's so exciting that you're joining me today. I hope that you enjoy my very own conspiracy theory it's not even conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy fact, maybe. And I'm going to explain it to you today. And it starts where most conspiracy theories at this point start, in the happy golden state of California. I think that's not the golden state, is it? I think it is, yes. In the golden state of California, where the happy cows and the confused people live, where I moved in 2019. And 2019 was a big year for California. They had just banned straws. So you could receive straws if you asked for them, but plastic straws were now only available by the request of the customer and were no longer just provided. Instead, they do those dissolving straws that you have to drink really fast before your straw gives up the ghost and dissolves into your drink. And so that had just happened. But even before that, what was really on my mind was a 2014 law that banned plastic bags. And so I really got ready. I bought this cool little lemon wedge freezer bag, and then I bought a bunch of reusable bags before moving to California because I was going to be prepared. And when I tell you that I forgot those bags more than I remembered them, that would be the case. But then COVID hit anyway, and suddenly those bags were better for the environment but bad for COVID, and the turns tabled, and we weren't even allowed to use them. And I was like, why the heck? They have all these extra bags that I'm not even allowed to use. But California has always been like this. They are full of environmental firsts. In 1960s, they set strict limitations on car pollution. In 1967, they create a dedicated air pollution agency. Its job is to monitor air pollution. In 1970, they required energy efficient buildings and appliances. It was the first state to build a large scale recycling programs. It was the first state to treat climate change as a state policy issue, so now it's the problem of the state. And it was the first state to require utilities to use renewable energy. California has earned the reputation of being environmentally forward. And the people who care about the turtles and the owls and the beaches. And to be honest, it wasn't awful moving there. That sounds horrible. It's not bad to be environmentally conscious. But it was a shift from Arizona, because Arizona isn't quite the same. And there was a little bit of a culture shock, and bags were a big part of that. But another part of it, the really big culture shock for me, was when it was time to get a driver's license. Because here I am, trying to figure out how to live this new life in California. And I go to the DMV, and I've actually done this in 5 states: Arizona, California, and Indiana, Nevada. Nevada was the worst by far, but California was a whole trip. And like a lot of things in California. And so I go to the DMV and I give the guy my Arizona driver's license, and he was like, nice try, I can tell this is fake. And I took it back and I was like, nice try, I know it's real, right? What do you say? And I was like, sir, this is my real Arizona license. And he was like, it expires in 2057. Do you think I was born yesterday? I know this isn't a real ID. And I was like, no, now we have something called a real ID. It wasn't a real ID either, because that didn't exist. But he thought it was a fake ID. And I was like, no, it's a real ID. And he was like, no, if you're going to create a fake ID, at least get the expiration year right. And I was like, sir, I don't have another driver's license. I'm over 15 and a half. I can drive. Okay. I need you to give me a California driver's license so that I have one. And finally he looked it up, and he was like, that's so weird. Arizona, it doesn't expire till you're 65, which is for me, 2057. I think it's 65, pretty sure. And so I was like, okay, I thought it was weird. And I go through the rest of the process, and I get to the end of the process, and they give me my new little driver's license. It was a paper. They didn't give me a plastic one. They sent that in the mail. And I'm looking at it, and it expires in 5 years. In 5 years, I have to do this again. I have to go through the whole process again. I have to bring it back five of them. I get 5 365-day periods, 5 trips around the sun, and I have to do this again. And I was just like, these things are made out of plastic. And I didn't think about it again. I just let the thought roll off me. But I think the truth is, deep down inside, a seed of bitterness in the back of my brain was born towards California and their very short lifespans on driver's license. Because I thought about this for 6 years. And I was just like, how many people live in California? How many of them can drive? How many of them get driver's license? That's so much plastic. What's going on? I don't know. Think about it later. And then I hadn't thought about it for a while, and I was scrolling through the internet, probably Google, I don't know where I was, and I just saw that in 2026 there was a new bag ban in California because they care about, the plastic. And I was like, how do you extra ban bags? Bags are just banned. That's like them coming out and saying, like, by the way, those banned straws, they're extra banned. And I was like, this is my time. I have one in the back of my brain has been like brewing this. What's up with the plastic in California? Do they really care about the baby turtles? And this was the time. So I was like, okay, well, what happened? So let's rewind. I'm gonna take you through the history. Bear with me. I pulled up the law and stuff. We did some deep diving through this, but it's okay. We can bear together. 2014, California passes a law, and I'm going to read you the verbiage. It prohibits a store from providing a single-use carry-out bag to a customer at the point of sale. So there is an exception. You can use single-use carry-out bags at a non-point of sale. For example, when you're collecting all of your apples and you get 4 apples because they're free-range apples in the store, instead of letting them roll all over your cart, you can actually put them into a single-use carry-out bag. And those will contain the apples. Those are still legal in California. However, at the point of sale, aka the cash register, you cannot have them. They are banned. And the other part of them that's banned is that single-use carry-out bag. So that means that any bag made of plastic, paper, or other material that isn't recycled or reusable or made by a certified producer. So there's 3 categories of bags that are now permitted to exist in California. They have to be recyclable, they have to be reusable, that's an and they have to be produced by a certified producer. Well, you may ask yourself, how does one become a certified producer in the state of California? Cal Recycle is Cal EPA's recycling and waste agency, and it runs all of the major recycling and waste programs. It funds their grants, it does their cleanup, all that stuff. It moves about $2 to $2.4 billion a year through its budget. And in order for a producer to be certified, they have to first pay for a third-party test, proving that the bags meet California standards, and then they have to go to Cal Recycle, which is a subset of Cal EPA, and they have to pay certification fees into the Reusable Grocery Bag Fund, commonly referred to as the RGBF. And so after they do the testing, they take the results of the testing, they go to Cal Recycle, and per 6, they have to pay anywhere from $10,000 to $11,000 to $13,000 per year. Every 2 years, sorry, not per year, every 2 years, and it's tiered by how many bags you're going to produce, to the Cal Recycle Administration. And if it's a non-plastic, so like a cardboard bag, like Trader Joe's, today's sponsored by Trader Joe's, that would be $6,000 every 2 years. So this is a large amount of money. You pay for the testing, you then pay for the reusable bag fees, and then you become a licensed producer in California. The revenue to Cal Recycle since 2019 has been about $267,000. So not a small amount, also not the hugest amount ever. But after you do all that work, you become a certified producer, and then you can sell your bags to stores, and stores can use those bags. They do claim that this is a wash program. It's not supposed to like use tax dollars, but it's supposed to like anything they make covers the cost of making it in the first place. And so whatever they're charging companies is supposedly like what they're taking in. So no one's making a profit off of this. The other thing that it did is that it required that anyone selling or distributing recycled paper bags, they have to charge a minimum of 10 cents, but more is of course okay. And so I actually feel bad. I have to take a moment to apologize to all California stores because sometimes I would get really mad at them for charging me for bags, but actually it's illegal for them not to. And they have a website where you can report a store for not selling the bags for 10 cents. So like if they give you a bag, it's actually illegal. And I feel bad now. So to the cashier at some grocery store in San Francisco, I had a broken arm and I was wearing a sweater because it was cold, and I had a sling. It wasn't a broken arm technically, but I had a sling, and I pulled the sweater over the sling and one arm was out and the other one was like tucked in. You couldn't see it. And so the shoulder flap was just like flapping. And I, bought something from the store, and as I was leaving, I asked for a bag, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to have to charge you." And I was like irritated, and I had the change because I paid cash. So I had like the exact change in my hand. And I asked for a bag and she had to like charge me. And so I'm trying to like give her the change so that I can get this bag. But I only had one arm because the other one was under the sweater, which is not what I told her. What I told her was, I looked at her dead in the face and I told her, I only have one arm. And she felt so bad for me. She's like, "It's okay, ma'am. Just take the bag. It's okay." And I made her break the law. And I did have two arms. What I meant was I only had one arm in commission. But what I accidentally said was that I only had one arm. And it was San Francisco after all. I think there's lots of sharks. So she probably just thought a shark like bit it off. And then she felt all bad. And I feel bad. So now we both feel bad. And if you're listening to this, it's very unlikely. I'm sorry for telling you I had one arm and making you break the law. There's a website I could report her to, but obviously we will not be doing that. So that's the situation with bags in California as of 2014. And it's still the situation when I emerged on the scene in 2019. I kind of was like, okay, well, let's be reasonable. How do other states handle bags, right? Other states that are also environmentally conscious. And so most states actually do ban certain materials in bags. It's usually those thin plastic bags that are banned, or they will require a store to charge a fee. But California is the only state that has that Cal Recycle administrative fee, those approved producer fees, and that third-party testing. And so I could try to be fair to California, and a lot of people are like thinking about it, but California was specifically strict. So the problem is that thin plastic bags were banned successfully in 2014, but that same law that banned the bags did allow thicker plastic bags to be sold as reusable. It met that standard under the law. And so think of when you go to like Sprouts or even like kind of bougier grocery stores and you can get those really thick plastic bags. They meet a durability standard, and so they could be sold for a fee and used in, California stores. Those thicker bags became the standard in California. Cardboard bags weren't as popular because they cost more to ship and they're harder to store. So you're paying for, so a store pays for storage, and so they didn't want to pay for storage. And so those thick plastic bags become the standard for California bags, meaning that plastic actually never leaves the checkout counter. Thicker plastic now enters the chat of the checkout counter. And so in year 2014, there was 157,385 tons of plastic bags per year being disposed of. When you fast forward to 2022, I don't know why it took them so long to figure out if it was working or not, but what we should see in 2022 is that banned plastic bags equals less plastic in the landfills, but instead there was 231,072 tons of plastic being disposed of every year. That's a 50%, it's a 47%, nearly 50% increase since they had banned the plastic bags. And this is per a press release from California. No one's making up these numbers. California is looking at its 2014 laws nearly 8 years later, and they've at this point increased it by 47%. As a matter of fact, if they had continued and not intervened, by 2029, they would have doubled the amount of plastic that you would find in the landfill. And that, my friends, is what we call a failed program, because we're supposed to lower plastic, right? Companies are paying to be approved. Stores are paying to like get rid of the old ones and get in these new bags. Customers are paying for the bags at point of sale. Everyone thinks like, here we are, save the turtle, save the owl, save the tree, save the planet, save all the things. And when we look at the numbers, we've actually increased the number of plastic in the landfills. Why? Why? What went wrong? I'll tell you. Now, 12 years later, because now it's 2026, they finally know why. They provide us actually with two whys. They apologize profusely. They say, it's our bad. We did it. Our bad. No. That's me being sarcastic in case you can't tell. That's not what they said. They provided us with two reasons. And the first thing they did was blame consumers. They said that consumers were using these reusable, thick plastic bags that they were purchasing from the stores, but they weren't reusing them enough. As a matter of fact, they were just throwing them away and they were leading them to waste. So the first thing that California does is they blame the consumer for not reusing the reusable bags. Now, I'm going to say the Midwest, I've lived there, they are not nearly as environmentally conscious, but they know how to reuse bags. For some reason, like in every Midwestern kitchen is a bag stuffed with 2,000 other bags, and what you plan on doing with them, I don't know. California apparently does not do this. I'm sure what they're thinking is like, oh, they're recyclable, so I'll recycle them, right? And they're putting them in the recycling bin. But California was like, no, you weren't supposed to recycle them. You were supposed to reuse them, and you didn't reuse them enough. So we increased plastic in the landfills. California determined that even though the plastic bags were recyclable, reusable, because they weren't being reused, that it wasn't actually like doing what they were supposed to do. Then they gave us another reason for why this went wrong. Reason number 2, California determined that while these bags are technically recyclable, the state's own recycling, this is where I like lose my mind. The state's own recycling systems were not able to recycle them. So we're putting these new reusable, recyclable bags into the recycling bin. They're going to the recycling plant, and California itself forgot to check if their own recycling programs were actually qualified and actually had what they needed to actually recycle these plastic bags. They called 69 recycling facilities in California, which actually is not that many, but they called 69. Only 2 of them even accepted these plastic bags that are now the new standard in California. They accepted them. But even those 2 that said like, yeah, we take those bags, they couldn't confirm that they did anything with those bags other than just chuck them in the landfill anyway. So at this point, California is like, oh, it's the recycling person's fault because they can't recycle them, and it's your fault because you didn't reuse them enough, right? And then they go a step further, that California turns around and sues the certified producers of plastic bags, arguing that calling these bags was recyclable was actually false advertising because California didn't realistically have a way to recycle them. So while they are recyclable, they are not able to be recycled in the United States. And I kid you not, they go after these producers who have now paid to be producers and paid for third-party testing that proved that they met California standards. They sued these companies for false advertisement, and they settled outside of court and never went before a judge for $3.35 million. Even though it was California's recycling infrastructure that was not able to recycle them. As a matter of fact, there's really not plants in the United States that I could find and do a huge amount of research on this side that can actually recycle those plastic bags. So when you go to a store and you pay 10 cents for an environmentally friendly bag, that bag is actually not able to be recycled. It's going in the trash after you use it probably more than once. I use them multiple times. And then it's going to landfill, and it's sitting in the landfill, and it's actually filling up our landfills faster than the cheap plastic bags you never had to pay for. And it took them 12 years to notice. And at this point, I was like, California, you kind of outed yourself because I read this in an article, but they also kind of like slipped it on their table, just like 2026. Oh, by the way, what they finally did was no more of those thick plastic bags. Those are out now because whoops, we can't recycle them. It only took us 12 years to figure that out, and are bad because the landfills are looking worse than they were. So let's pause. Pause on that little economic recycling California government lesson, and let's talk about driver's license. Driver's licenses are made out of plastic, which you probably know. Pull yours out right now. Take a look at it, right? Depending on what state you're in. Apparently, they all have different expiration dates. Learned that the hard way. Driver's license specifically have about 6 to 7 grams of plastic. And it's basically just a credit card. So really, state-issued cards tend to be 6 to 7 grams of plastic, as well as credit cards and stuff like that. So California has 27.7 million licensed drivers. And since each license has to be renewed every 5 years, and they weigh about 6 to 7 grams of plastic, altogether it's about 200 tons of plastic in driver's license. 200 tons. Those have to wow, that was an intelligent statement. California has to replace those licenses every 5 years. This does not count I lost my license or I moved and I'm required to re-get them. So like you have to update your address within 10 days, I think. That doesn't include those. This is just like if every licensed driver has one physical card and they only have to replace it every 5 years, which is best case scenario, that's 40 tons of plastic every single year just from driver's license alone. So let's look at what other states do. Because I was like, before I harp on California, is everyone like Arizona? Is everyone like California? And the answer is yes and no. So Vermont, we're calling you out today. You require that drivers renew their license every 2 or 4 years. Why you would choose 2, I'm not sure. But you can choose 4. That's the shortest in our country. Alabama, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, Pennsylvania are all 4-year. You have to get them. And then 5 years is a number of states, including California. 6 years is Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maine, Missouri, North Dakota. And then the most common is actually 8 years. The only states that don't then do 8 years would be places I want to live one day, Arizona and Montana. And you may ask, Heather, why did your driver's license expire in 2057 if it only was good for 12 years? The license itself is valid until 2057, but you're required by law to get a new picture every 12 years. So realistically, you have to get a new driver's license every 12 years. That does, though, make that the average length of the lifespan of a driver's license in the country of the United States of America is 8 years. Most of the states are 8, and the median time is 8 years. So California is shorter by 3 years than the median. California itself has chosen one of the shortest lifespans of driver's license. So let's take the math that we've done and figure out if how could California impact plastic? We're putting the plastic bags to the side for a second. How could it impact plastic if it went to the median length in the United States? So if it did that, plastic would drop from about 40 tons per year to 25 tons per year. That's almost cutting in half. 15 tons would be saved every year. And it's a really easy switch. There's no lawsuits that you have to file later. There's no enforcement. You can't blame a consumer. It's just now instead of coming back every 5 years, you come back every 8 years. And we save just like that 15 tons of plastic. Say they were caring about plastic, which they definitely say that they do, and they went to Arizona style or Montana style, and they went with 12 years instead of the 8 years. That would drop to 21 tons of plastic per year, and it would save them 19 tons of plastic every single year. That's nearly half. And all they did was change how often you go back to the DMV to get a new driver's license. And this is just driver's license. Think about state cards, professional license, permits, vehicle registration cards, those stickers, state and regional transit cards, state ID, employee badges, hunting, fishing, recreational license. Some of those are online, I know, because I live close enough to California that some of those are just online. Or the state benefit cards. All of those things, if they just reduce the amount that they have to print, they could actually just lower the amount of plastic. And it's not by asking everyone else to change what they're doing. It's just changing what they actually have control over and what they themselves could change. And I thought of this in like 10 seconds. I was like, how could we lower plastic in California because we care about the turtles? And I was like, less going and getting your driver's license. It took me like 10 seconds. And maybe I'm a dumb person and I don't know that there's some reason that you have to go back every 5 years. But my guess is that in some ways, either no one thought of it or it's just too easy, because what did it cost them to implement this like no bag thing in California? Producers had it harder because they now had to get third-party testing and they had to pay fees. Stores had it harder because they now have to store the paper or store like the thick plastic. They have to pay high for shipping and they have to handle all that overhaul. Consumers have it harder because they have to pay 10 cents per bag, and the state had to develop a whole entire new department. And then if you look at the department's budget, which I'm not going to go over, but I did look at, they spent a lot of money on a website. It's just a web page, really, but like that's what it costs them to do this 2014 ban the plastic bags thing. So you could just boil this down to like, that was a stupid idea, right? It cost everyone everything, and it actually gave us zero results. But I actually think we should push a little bit further, because what does California lose if they do something as easy or as like on them as extending the driver's license length? Right now, at $27.7 million and at $46 per driver's license, in a 5-year cycle, California makes about $255 million per year to put if all driver's license got their license renewed every 5 years. If they changed and went to an 8-year license, it would only be $159.2 million per year. And that's a $95.57 million per year loss to the state of California. It actually would have cost them money in revenue to change and make it longer, because less people are buying less driver's license. And so thus you have a lower amount of revenue. And if you switch it to the 12-year, they have to renew every 12 years. Over 20 years at that 12-year renewal, they lose $3 billion in foregone driver's license revenue. And I propose that number, that $3 billion number, the loss in revenue from changing something like the driver's license year, it is a big incentive behind why they wouldn't. The other one cost everyone else lots of things and gained them money. As a matter of fact, we can look at exactly how much, because they told us their revenue. In the 5 years that they reported revenue, they made about $1.3 million. And then you add in that lawsuit of $3.35 million, and all of a sudden you have $1.7 million in the first 5 years made by this company that then failed to do what it was supposed to do and actually increase the landfill. And then, of course, when it didn't work, they're just able to blame everyone else, sue one person, and just move on with their life. New law, move on. So now just pretend you're a time traveler with me. You're going to go back to 2014 and you have a choice to make. You can literally do nothing. Okay? That's the first one. Okay? 8 years go by. We get to 2022. Let's just do a 2% increase, because more people are moving to California, say. So like there's going to be a little bit of an increase. So we'll just do an even 2% increase. There's 184,000 tons per year in the landfill. Okay, that's timeline A. World B is that all we're going to do is touch a driver's license. We're not going to touch anything else. All right, so in 2014, you say, hey, driver's license, do we now renew them every 8 years? Okay. Get in your time machine, go to 2026, 120 tons less. That's not a ton, but it's better than nothing, and it definitely worked. Or you go back to 2014 and you get to pick the real world, the one that we actually have. You fast forward to 2026, and it is increased by 296,000 tons. Over 8 years, doing nothing would have added about 100,000 tons of plastic. Changing the driver's license would have saved about 100 tons of plastic. And the policy that they chose added nearly 300,000 tons. I had a teacher in college who actually just passed away this past weekend. I think, yeah, this weekend. And actually, it's funny. I texted my sister, and she was like, "It's hard to be sad." And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Because she had such a great life, and now she's with Jesus." And I was like, Okay, that was not the hot take I thought it was. It was a much cooler take than I thought it was, right? Because she was a wonderful woman who impacted tons of lives. And she told me something that's kind of become like a mantra for my own life. And it was this. It's that people do what they want to do. If California had wanted to reduce plastic, it would have started with the plastic that it owned instead of regulating everyone else, collecting fees, and then blaming the failure downstream and moving on. Don't applaud policy before we measure the outcomes. California has been like highlighted as a state that just is environmentally friendly and forward thinking about, environment and climate change and all that stuff, right? I'm not saying those things are bad to be. That's a decision for a different time and a decision you have to make for yourself. But we're so quick to like applaud the policy changes, but then we forget to actually measure the outcome to see if it's doing what it said it was going to do. Don't start applauding until you see change. But this, I think, is kind of the biggest one for me when I look at other companies and even when I ask for change myself. Be skeptical of change that begins with everyone else. If in order for this great thing to happen, you have to change, but I don't have to change, you should be skeptical of that type of change. If California wanted to change plastic, they would control the plastic they have the most control over and encourage the plastic they have the least control over. Instead, they did the exact opposite. They changed nothing for themselves, forced everyone else to make the changes, and then ultimately failed. And that, my friend, is PlasticGate. This has been another episode of Heresy with Heather. I hope you enjoyed delving into the depths of PlasticGate like I did. I hope you remember the next time that you're at a store and you pay 10 cents for a bag, that bag is going in the landfill. And I hope that you can learn every time that tangible thing you touch that bag, you remember PlasticGate. Thank you and have a great night.